Go. We have on the left Oliver Tomajko playing Sultai midrange, and on the right Marshall Arthurs, longtime player of the SCG Tour. Found a lot of success here on the SCG Tour as well. Also playing Sultai midrange. You see Tomajko leading with a Wild Growth Walker on turn 2. Marshall Arthurs just going to deploy a Drowned Catacomb tap. Let's see what he's got for his turn 2. Looks like we're looking at a Forest End. Wild Growth Walker, the True Mirror.
Yeah, this deck was probably the worst kept secret coming into the weekend.
Yeah, it started to buzz on Twitter. People were definitely talking about it. The Crassus word got out, spread across this tournament, and here we see two players doing very well. Very similar takes on the archetype. There are some small differences. If you head over to Cardboard Live, take a peek, you'll see there's some different things, but we're looking to get into the nitty-gritty of it, play the Golgari Mirror for a long time, and then close the door with Crassus.
Yeah, the two big differences between these two players' decks is that Oliver has the Llanowar Elves and one copy of Incubation Druid, and Marshall has elected to not play any mana acceleration whatsoever.
That's got to favor Oliver here, right? Just getting on board quicker, getting to larger Crassuses. Is that the plural of Crassus? Crassuses?
So whenever I pluralize a Magic card, I basically just add normal pluralization to the end of the Magic card title. So maybe proper pluralness for Crassus is Crassies or something.
Yeah,
but I would just say Hydroid Crassuses.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, I think Oliver's going to be a little bit better in this matchup. But you see Marshall Arthurs has a unique tool of his own, Growth Chamber Guardian, out of the Golgari deck. Not a lot of action for that card thus far in this archetype. Occasionally seeing it, but I think things have tended to go the other way as far as the 2-drop slot goes, with a lot more Incubation Druids.
Yeah, not a lot of Growth Chamber Guardians we've seen so far in the tournament, actually. And I think it is one of the strongest cards in the set. Part of the problem is that it gets caught up in like the mid-range soup, like we've seen with Biogenic Ooze.
Right. So we see Marshall Arthurs. He's deployed a Hadana's Climb, adding a counter to his Wild Growth Walker, but Tomajko is ready and has the Vraska's Contempt to send that Wild Growth Walker to exile, picking up a couple life, raising his life total to 23. Oliver's going to untap, take a draw. What does he have for his now 5th turn here?
Not a lot going on.
Yeah, kind of from both sides. Slower game, not a lot of development. Hadana's Climb is an impactful card if it gets online, but not yet. Can get those Growth Chamber Guardians finding their friends for a very low price of nothing. That's always nice.
For sure, that is definitely a combo. Oliver does have an Assassin's Trophy, which is a card whose stock rose a lot coming into this week.
Oh, yeah. We've talked a lot about the powerful enchantments, things like Mortify getting better. I'd add Assassin's Trophy to the same camp there. You need to be able to deal with a diverse array of permanents right now, and Assassin's Trophy does them all. Yeah. Literally all the permanents.
Yep, and it is a steep cost, especially if your opponents also have Hydroid Crassus in their deck. That's certainly a good use for all of your excess mana.
Here we see Ravenous Chupacabra from Arthurs. That's going to deal with the Wild Growth Walker. And now Hadana's Climb goes to target the Growth Chamber Guardian. And Oliver choosing to send his Assassin's Trophy at the Guardian. What do you think about that, Jerry?
I think that's reasonable. You either have to kill the Climb or the Guardian. I'm not sure which one is better. But with Oliver basically on air right now, it makes a lot more sense to kill the Guardian, because otherwise you're just going to get swarmed with 4/4s.
Right, and that would be impactful now. We talked about how a lot of times in these mid-range mirrors it may not matter. This is one of those times where it would.
Yeah, when you basically just have nothing going on, I think it's huge.
I think Oliver may have another copy of Assassin's Trophy in his hand, and that may be influencing his decision as well. If Hadana's Climb is about to get out of hand, he still has an answer to it.
Right, and he just picked that up this turn, so pretty happy to trade with the Chupacabra just to make sure the Climb stays offline, and Oliver could Assassin's Trophy the next threat, but here's Hydroid Crassus to make that plan just horrible.
Yeah, that's going to be bigger than 2, Oliver. That's going to be a 4, drawing 2 cards. Now it's going to be a 5. That's going to flip Hadana's Climb, and things went very bad very quickly because Crassus is incredible.
Oliver cast Assassin's Trophy, gave Marshall a land. Marshall used that land to power out a Crassus, which got him an extra card and an extra life, and then it allowed him to transform the Hadana's Climb also. So now Marshall's just kind of going off.
Yeah, and we see Vivian Reed come down from Oliver answering that Crassus. There's not many points where you feel bad about answering a creature with Vivian. Usually that's a very favorable trade. In the case of Crassus, though, it usually brings friends with it, And now we've got the Crassus for 6. That's going to draw 3 cards, gain 3 life, be a 6/6 flyer. That's problematic for Oliver, to say the least. People, put 4 copies of this card in your Sultai deck. I mean, this is what it's about. This is how you play these games.
I might play 3.
No, you're playing 4. 4 is correct. I'm sure of it. This card is so powerful. See it picked off by another Assassin's Trophy here. Again, in most cases, at this point in the game, you're fine Assassin's Trophying a big threat. Just adding the 9th land, not likely to be very impactful, but Crassus drew 3 cards last turn.
And your opponent has a full hand.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oliver found his own response to Crassus. What's the best response to a Crassus?
Plagiarize?
It's another Crassus. And here we see a Crassus for 5, drawing 2 cards, gaining 2 life, giving Oliver a threat. Looks like he found 2 good ones there. Find Finality is 1. Can't quite catch the other one.
Yeah, I don't know. I think 3 is reasonable. Obviously, if this is the only matchup that matters, what you probably want to do is build a deck that goes bigger, not something that's kind of small balling with Vraska's Contempts and Chupacabras and stuff. You might want to look into the Wilderness Reclamation space. But otherwise, I think just playing 3, it's pretty bad in the early game. Then you get situations like that where you just get to find Finality and then all back.
I guess that's true. I guess copies are somewhat redundant because they find additional copies and they can be rebought from the graveyard. That's what this Golgari deck does. It is able to recycle its threats on a regular basis. And Marshall Arthur's gearing up for a huge Crassus turn. Let's see what Oliver can do in the meantime. Can he stem the tides here?
Gearing up for a big Crassus turn? He's already had like 7 of them.
He's got more coming. That's not it. We're not done. Oliver choosing to go with Wild Growth Walker into Jade Light Ranger, putting some bodies on the table, leaving a Find Finality on top. Man, there's going to be so many Crassuses in this game.
So I think Marshall is ahead and Marshall is favored, but Oliver's gaining a bunch of life. He's down on mana, which matters a lot, and Marshall's going to be the first one to really play a giant Crassus on this turn.
Right.
But Oliver's fighting.
Yeah, oh yeah, I think so. I don't think the door is closed yet. It's funny, too. We identified Oliver as the one who would likely have the mana advantage in this matchup, and things have not gone that way. He Assassin's Trophy 2 threats.
Right.
So that does matter now.
The card does have a drawback.
How about Crassus for 9? How does that suit you?
It's big.
It's big. Drawing 4 cards, gaining 4 life.
I would rather Sphinx's Revelation myself, but I respect a 9/9 Flying Trampler, especially when you have a Transformed Madonna's Climb in play.
Yeah, it turns out that ends the game pretty quickly. I think Marshall's going to be doing a little discard into hand size here. Tough life as the Sultai player on turn, whatever we're on now, 9 or 10.
Stupidest rule in Magic.
You would get rid of hand size rule if
Yeah.
you could? I feel like that's self-serving in some way.
No!
I don't know. From the guy who just wants to cast Sphinx's Revelation.
I wanted to cast Revelation for like 4 to get enough cards to tempo my opponent out.
Oh, so you're arguing you would have been respectful about it and not abuse the privilege of having infinite hand size.
Well, I can't make any promises.
Exactly. I knew we couldn't hold you to that. So Oliver going to go ahead and deploy a Crassus. What a surprise. Dueling Crass Eyes back and forth.
Crassuses.
Crass Eyes. We're going to flow back and forth. You have to be adaptable, just like the Simic. You like that one?
Oh, God, that hurts. That physically pains me.
Let's see what Marshall has on his turn here.
I think you just broke my clavicle.
I'm sorry.
I think we're matching now. We have matching injuries.
That's good. You deserved it after your hand size comments. So Crass is going to rumble into the red zone here. 9-9. Looks like Oliver's just going to take this one.
Think about if there was no discard to hand size rule, you could kill all of their permanents with Teferi, and they couldn't discard Nexus of Fate to continue playing.
Interesting.
I'm trying to appeal to you
specifically. That was a good appeal. You definitely know the sweet spot with which to bargain. Wild Growth Walker from Marshall here. Followed up by a Merfolk Branch Walker, going to gain a little life. Reveal a Growth Chamber Guardian. You like that card here?
It's so small ball. I mean, it is a spell. If Marshall has run out of things to do with his mana, that's certainly reasonable.
And that uses all of the mana, right? Like he just gets to dump everything into it and put a lot of big bodies on the battlefield immediately.
Yeah.
I kind of like it.
This is just the gameplay. You play a Crassus for a bunch, you draw a bunch of cards. Next turn, you play out all your small stuff.
Yep.
And then the next turn, you Crassus again, reload again.
Right.
It is very similar to Sphinx's Revelation as far as the play pattern is concerned. But in the meantime, you're like, attack for 10.
Yeah. I think that is a good limiter on how insane these things can get. There is a very real clock sitting on the opposing side of the battlefield from Oliver that he has to answer in some way. Gonna go with a Merfolk Branchwalker to start. Finds a Llanowar Elves, not interested. Going to the graveyard. Wildgrowth Walker gets a little bigger. Merfolk Branchwalker gets a counter. Oliver's life total gets a little healthier. Going to 21 now. But no, he's seen enough.
Oliver's off it.
Yeah, he doesn't have any answer for that gigantic Crassus backed up with Hadana's Climb.
The funny thing is I think he had a Vivian, but he like knows another Crassus is coming,
Right.
and still has the Hadana's Climb, and he's at a mana disadvantage. Like, in the interest of time, let's just move on.
That's a player who understands the matchup and knows that he might play 5 more turns of it, but ultimately he's going to come out behind. So Oliver leading with the mana advantage here with Llanowar Elves, getting into the red zone, followed by a second Llanowar Elves. Okay, we have a lot of mana. Now let's find something to do with it.
Right.
On side.
I would hope that with this kind of start, you have some way to actually translate that into something.
Going to be important if Oliver's going to find success here. We have a Merfolk Branchwalker revealing a land, going into Marshall's hand, passes the turn back to Oliver, who untaps, draws a card. See some lands. I see Assassin's Trophy. I think I see a Cast Down.
And a Contempt.
Oh, that may not be what you want to do with all that mana.
No, I really needed a Vivian there.
Yeah, Vivian, Crassus, some kind of payoff. Unmoored Ego out of Marshall Arthur's. Jerry Thompson, I'm going to be quiet for a while. I'm going to let you talk about this Unmoored Ego here and tell me what you think about it. I bet it's naming Crassus.
I think Marshall just won the game.
Is it that impactful that you are willing to go this far?
No, I mean, obviously it's good if this is the only card advantage-y type engine that your deck has, because, hey, now you have all the Crassuses, and you're just going to like dominate your opponent into the late game. And for week 1, that might be how people have built their decks, you know, but we see Oliver has a couple copies of Carnage Tyrant. He still has the 3 Vivians, maybe some stuff out of the sideboard like these Hostage Takers.
Right.
Oliver also has a random Biogenic Ooze, which he might have to lean on now. So if this is a thing that people are doing, I mean, you're playing Sultai. You're not stretching your mana to play Unmoored Ego. I could totally see how it would probably just win you the game if that's all your opponent had to lean on. But, you know, think if Oliver did have the Vivian that turn, or even if he just played a Crassus for 3, drew a card, now he had that thing in play, he could trade it away, find finality it back later. Like, Unmoored Ego definitely has its own issues.
Yeah. I want to make clear, Marshall's not the first person I've seen suggest that technology for the Sultai Mirrors. It's a drastic step, one that time will tell if is warranted. I will mention Unmoored Ego, though. Not a blank in other matchups. Getting a Nexus of Fate with Unmoored Ego is often very game-breaking against those decks as well.
Right. So it's not like you're playing it specifically just for this matchup.
Correct. Looks like we have a Jade Light Ranger coming out from Marshall. Oliver's going to go ahead and just cast down that, get that off the table. Oliver taking it on tap here, drawing. Looks like another land off the top of his deck. Time for those Llanowar Elves to rumble, bringing Marshall down to 15. Plays a tap land, passes back to Marshall.
These Llanowar Elves have looked pretty bad.
And maybe Marshall's onto something, cutting them from his deck. Maybe he knows you need more impactful cards in this matchup.
Maybe. I don't know, though. I find it weird to take that stance when you're boarding in Unmoored Ego to hit their Crassuses. Like,
right.
Clearly you think that Crassus matters, and at that point having the acceleration will matter. So
yeah. Oliver going to go ahead and deploy Jade Light Ranger here. Putting a counter on it, trying to get some battlefield presence together.
Man, even Hadana's Climb would be fine for Oliver as a backup win condition,
right?
Which he doesn't have.
Right, he needs something. You can't lean on Crassus if opposing players are going to look to Unmoored Ego them, which, I mean, I don't know if players anticipated that coming into this weekend. Things would get that far that fast. That's a drastic escalation of the arms race if you think about it.
Sort of. It might be possible that you have Unmoored Ego in your sideboard for Nexus already.
Okay. And you just identified it as a positive card in this matchup as well.
Yeah, it's funny because on Marshall's deck list, there are some cards scratched off, which is always kind of telling. It's like the last-minute changes that players make. And
right.
He scratched out Hydroid Crassus and upped it to 4. I can't really tell what it was before, but he also scratched out 2 Unmoored Ego and upped it to 3.
Yeah. He figured something out right as he sat down, that's for sure. Couple attacks from Marshall here. Oliver's going to respond just using those removal spells where he can to stay in this game, but that's not the battle you want to be fighting here. And after Contempt has been used, it's time for Vivian Reed. Vivian revealing, looks like a few lands off the top here, but also a Jade Light Ranger. Fine grab there.
Jade Light Ranger also effectively lands.
Right, at some point it will likely turn into lands, but we have an Assassin's Trophy to clean up this Vivian Reed again. We've seen this game plan before. Keep putting more lands on Marshall's side of the battlefield. He's still got the Crassuses in his deck.
What is Marshall going to do with all this excess mana?
Yeah, I think he'll find a way to use it at some point. Oliver will not be afforded the same luxury, and once again, the Llanowar Elf deck has lost the mana advantage.
Not surprising.
Like a Hadana's Climb off the top for Marshall there. That might be exactly what he's looking for to bring this game to a swift conclusion at this point. I mean, I guess Crassus would be exactly what he was looking for, but also a nice find, Hadana's Climb.
Can only play 4 of them, though.
Right. It's a shame. No, that doesn't go. Yep, he found it. Also going to the hand. You're right. Jade Light Rangers just lands.
Nailed it.
I think he probably wanted a few counters there to accelerate this Hadana's Climb flipping, but what can you do? You don't always get what you want. Going to look to make that Merfolk Branchwalker a little bigger. Counter will resolve. Merfolk Branchwalker will attack, bringing Oliver down to 7. Marshall has a tap land, passes the turn back to Oliver. Desperate for something to get back into this game. Woodland Cemetery, probably not it.
Just some more real estate.
Yeah.
Oliver had a good start. 2 Llanowar Elves.
Couldn't
3
capitalize.
removal spells, but basically nothing in the meantime. Just a bunch of air.
Right. And Hadana's Climb continues to spread those counters around. The beats keep coming. Oliver draws another land, and that is going to do it. Oliver extending his hand.